My name is Sienna Hart, and I'm 25 years old. If you had asked me a month ago whether I thought a relationship could end in one dinner, I probably would have said no. I would have told you breakups happen slowly, in layers, in long conversations, and quiet disappointments. But now I know sometimes it happens in a single sentence. Sometimes it happens because the person sitting across from you decides, in front of a table full of strangers, to show you exactly how little they respect you. My ex-boyfriend Evan became my ex that night. Or more accurately, he became my ex the moment I stopped making excuses for him. We had been together for 8 months. He was 24, charming in that polished, social way that makes a man seem more emotionally intelligent than he actually is. In the beginning, things felt easy. He was funny, affectionate, and very good at acting impressed by my independence. I own my own plumbing business. I started small, took ugly jobs nobody else wanted, worked weekends, answered emergency calls in the middle of the night, and built it into something real. It is not glamorous, but it is mine. Last year, I made more money than most people our age even think is possible. I also own my house outright. He lived there with me. That part matters, because it is hard to forget now. Hard to forget when I think about the food in my kitchen he ate, the shower he used, the bed he slept in, the comfort he enjoyed in a house I paid for with my own hands, only to turn around and act like my success was somehow embarrassing. The first few months, he never said it directly. Men like him usually do not right away. It came out in smaller ways. A pause when people asked what I did. A quick little smile when he corrected me from owner to something softer. A strange tone whenever he talked about other couples, especially the women at his upscale boutique job and the men they dated. Everyone at work lives in those new downtown condos now, he told me one evening. While standing in my kitchen like he was commenting on the weather, they have rooftop pools and concierge service and valet parking. I remember glancing up from the invoices on the counter and saying, "This house is paid off. Why would I trade a paid-off house for rent and a doorman?" Because it's not just about money, Sienna, it's about lifestyle. That word stayed with me. Lifestyle. He said it like my life was a draft version of something better. Like the fact that I worked with my hands meant I had somehow failed to become the kind of woman he could brag about properly. Then he started spending more time with two people from work, Ashley and Madison, and their partners. Every story about them came loaded with comparison. Their dinners, their trips, their office jokes, their condo parties, their expensive candles, their carefully curated lives. And somewhere in the middle of all that, he stopped looking at me like a woman who had built something impressive and started looking at me like a problem he needed to rebrand. Last Friday, he texted me and said he wanted us to go to a new upscale restaurant downtown. The kind of place where every plate is arranged like art and every steak costs more than a week's groceries. I said yes, even though those places have never really been my thing. I figured maybe he just wanted a night out. Then he added, "Great, I invited Ashley and Madison and their partners. You'll finally get to meet them." That should have told me everything. Saturday night, I met them there. The restaurant looked exactly like the kind of place built for people who want to be seen spending money. Dim gold lighting, too many mirrors, a wine list thick as a paperback novel. Ashley and Madison arrived, dressed like they had spent an hour getting ready to look like they had not tried at all. Their partners, Kevin and Brad, were exactly what I expected. Expensive watches, office job confidence, and the kind of conversation that always sounds like a LinkedIn profile trying to flirt. When introductions started, I watched Evan smile at everyone else more warmly than he smiled at me. "This is my boyfriend Kevin," Ashley said brightly. "He works in digital marketing." "And this is Brad," Madison added. "He's in corporate finance." Then all eyes shifted to us. "This is my girlfriend Sienna," Evan said. And there was already something off in his tone. "She owns a maintenance company." A maintenance company. Not a plumbing business. Not the company I built from the ground up. Not the thing that paid for the house he lived in. A maintenance company. Just vague enough to make me sound smaller. Just polished enough to make the truth easier for him to swallow. I looked at him and he did not look back. The dinner dragged. Kevin and Brad talked about client lunches and quarterly numbers and long-term investments. Ashley and Madison kept dropping details about weekend getaways and tasting menus and boutique hotels, like they were laying down cards in some ridiculous social game. Every time the conversation drifted toward what I actually did, Evan redirected it. "Sienna handles property issues for commercial buildings," he said at one point, when Brad asked if I mostly worked residential or industrial, which was technically true in the loosest, most irritating way possible. I let it go for a while. Not every insult has to be confronted the moment it lands, but I could feel something building under my ribs. Not anger yet, something colder, the beginning of clarity. Halfway through dinner, Kevin started talking about a Bermuda trip he was planning with Ashley, some all-inclusive resort for their 6-month anniversary. Ashley lit up immediately, touching his arm, leaning into the story like it had already become part of her identity. That sounds incredible, Evan said, looking at them with open envy. Sienna and I never do anything like that. I turned to him. We literally talked about Costa Rica. You said you wanted to wait until summer. That's different, he said with a dismissive little shrug. That's not a real vacation. I stared at him. What makes a vacation real? He gave me a look that somehow managed to be embarrassed and annoyed at the same time. You know, somewhere romantic, nice resorts, good service, something elevated. Costa Rica has resorts, I said evenly. It's not the same. Ashley jumped in then, smiling too sweetly. Kevin surprised me with that trip. It's so nice being with someone who knows how to treat you right. The comment floated there for a second, and I felt the table shift. Must be nice, Evan said, and this time he was looking directly at me. Madison followed right behind her. Brad took me to Napa last month. Wine country is so romantic. Honestly, so much better than camping or those casual little weekend things. See, Evan said. That's what I mean. Some people know how to plan real dates. I kept my voice calm. We've been on plenty of nice dates. Like what? He asked. The lake house weekend, that concert downtown, dinner at Romano's last month. He actually laughed under his breath. Those aren't the same thing. How are they not the same thing? Because they're not impressive, Sienna. They're just normal. The table went quieter after that. Even Kevin and Brad seemed to realize the performance was becoming uglier than they expected. I gave him one chance to stop. Maybe we should talk about this at home, I said. No, he said. Let's talk about it now. I'm tired of pretending everything's fine. Pretending what's fine? Us, our relationship, our future. Something inside me settled then. Not because I knew what he was about to say, but because I suddenly understood he wanted an audience. This was not pain spilling out by accident. This was deliberate. What's wrong with our future? I asked. He leaned back in his chair and looked at me like I was forcing him to say something unfortunate but necessary. You're content running a little maintenance business forever. My jaw tightened. It's not little, and you know that. Successful compared to what? He asked. Compared to most businesses. Define successful. I make good money. How good? I felt heat rise in my chest. Good enough to own a house and support both of us. That's not what I asked, he said. The table went still. Then he looked around at them, then back at me, and smiled in the worst way I had ever seen on his face. Sienna, you can't even satisfy me, let alone provide for me. For a second, I did not react. Not because it did not hit, but because it hit so cleanly that my brain needed a moment to catch up with what had just happened. Ashley's hand froze halfway to her glass. Madison blinked like she was not sure she had heard correctly. Kevin and Brad looked down, then back up, caught between discomfort and curiosity. And Evan just sat there, calm, certain, like he had finally said the thing he had been holding back. I let out a small breath, not shaky, not emotional, just controlled. Wow, I said quietly. He tilted his head, almost defensive already. What? I looked at him for a long second. Really looked at him. The man who had been living in my house for 4 months. The man who used my kitchen, my shower, my bed. The man who had watched me take emergency calls at 2 a.m. and still somehow convinced himself I was not enough. You really chose to say that, I said. It's the truth, he replied, crossing his arms. I'm just being honest. I nodded slowly. Okay, let's be honest then. I turned slightly, shifting my attention to the rest of the table. Kevin, you work in digital marketing, right? He hesitated, glancing at Evan, then back at me. Yeah. Do you mind if I ask what you make a year? Evan immediately leaned forward. Sienna, don't... It's fine, Kevin said quickly. Around 70. 70,000? Yeah. I nodded, then looked at Brad. And you? Brad shifted in his seat. 85, roughly. Got it. Then I leaned back slightly, letting my gaze settle on Evan. So, I said softly, since we're being honest, do you want to tell them what I made last year? His jaw tightened. This isn't 160,000. The words landed flat and heavy. No drama, no raised voice, just fact. Ashley's eyes widened. Madison actually leaned forward. Kevin blinked, like he was recalculating something in real time. Brad let out a quiet, surprised breath. Evan said nothing. That's not possible, Madison said finally. It is, I replied. Emergency work, commercial contracts, new builds. I'm booked out 6 months in advance. Ashley looked at Kevin, then back at me. You make more than double what he does. Apparently, I said, glancing briefly at Evan, that's still not impressive enough. He shifted uncomfortably, color rising in his face. Money isn't everything. I let out a small laugh. You literally just said I can't provide for you. Seems like money mattered a lot about 10 seconds ago. It's not about money, he insisted quickly. It's about image. There it was again. Image? I repeated. Yes, he said, gaining confidence now that he had something abstract to hide behind. What am I supposed to tell people when they ask what my girlfriend does? I held his gaze. You tell them your girlfriend owns a successful plumbing company, I said, and built it herself. His lips pressed into a thin line. It's not the same. You're right, I said. It's not. I reached for my glass, took a small sip, then set it down carefully. Then I raised my hand and caught the waiter's attention. Can we get the check, please? Evan turned to me sharply. What are you doing? I'm paying for my dinner, I said, and I'm leaving. You can't just leave. I'm not in the middle of anything, I cut in calmly. You made your point. The check came a minute later. I picked it up, glanced over it, and did the math in my head. 2 drinks, salmon, tax, tip. I pulled out my wallet and placed $40 neatly on the table. He stared at the cash like it offended him. You always pay when we go out. I looked at him one last time. You just told me I can't provide for you, I said. Feels weird to keep trying after that. I stood up. No dramatic gestures, no raised voice, no scene. Just done. Good luck splitting the rest, I added lightly, glancing at the others. Then I turned and walked out. The moment the door closed behind me, the noise of the restaurant came rushing back like it had been waiting. Conversations, laughter, glasses clinking, life moving on like nothing had just happened. But for me, something had shifted permanently. My phone started buzzing around 11. His name lit up the screen. I did not answer. Then came the texts. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. They put me on the spot. A minute later, Ashley had to cover my part of dinner. Can you send me money? I actually laughed out loud at that one. Not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly him. When he got home, it was just past midnight. He knocked on the bedroom door and asked if we could talk. I stood on the other side for a second, staring at the handle. Then I reached out and locked it. I'm tired, I said through the door. We'll talk later. There was silence, then a quiet, defeated, okay. The next morning, he was gone. No confrontation, no big apology, just a note on the kitchen counter. I'm staying with Ashley for a few days. I think we both need space. I read it once, folded it, and set it aside. Space. He thought this was space. Like this was temporary. Like this was something we would circle back to once emotions settled. But standing there in my own kitchen, sunlight coming through the windows, the house quiet in a way it had not been in months, I realized something. I did not feel abandoned. I felt relieved. That afternoon, I went to the hardware store to pick up supplies for a job. And that is where everything started to shift. Sienna? I turned around, and there he was. Noah, high school. Same crooked smile, same easy presence, just older, more grounded. Oh my God, I said, laughing a little. Noah. We stood there for a second, both surprised in the best way. What are you doing here, Chiet? He asked. Working, I said, holding up the list in my hand. What about you? Just moved back last month, he said. Got a job at the hospital. Physical therapist. We ended up talking in the parking lot for almost an hour, and it was easy. No tension, no posturing, no weird pauses where I had to translate myself into something more acceptable. Just conversation. You still running your own business? He asked at one point. Yeah, I said. Expanded a bit over the last couple years. He smiled, and there was something genuine in it. That's impressive, Sienna, he said. Seriously, not a lot of people have the guts to build something like that. I blinked for a second, not because it was a huge compliment, but because it felt unfamiliar. We exchanged numbers before we left, and a few days later we got coffee. Then dinner. Then another dinner. Nothing forced. Nothing performative. Just a steady, easy kind of attention that made me realize how much tension I had been carrying before. He asked questions because he actually wanted to know the answers. He listened when I talked about work. He never flinched at what I did. Never tried to reframe it. Never softened it into something more presentable. One night, while we were having dinner at my place, he looked around and asked, You own this whole place? Yeah, I said. Bought it 3 years ago. He let out a low whistle. That's seriously impressive. I smiled a little. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. That was the difference. Not money, not style, not image. Respect. A week after the dinner, Evan came back. It was Friday evening. I was in the kitchen, waiting for Noah to arrive. We had plans to stay in, take out, a movie, nothing complicated. The doorbell rang. I smiled without thinking, already assuming it was Noah. That feeling lasted exactly 2 seconds. Because when I opened the door, it was Evan, standing there on my front step with red eyes, a strained expression, and 2 full suitcases behind him. Not a backpack, not a casual stop-by. 2 suitcases. Like he had already decided how this conversation was supposed to end. "Sienna," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "thank God you're home." I did not move. I did not step aside. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He took a step forward. "I've been thinking all week. I know I messed up. I know I said things I shouldn't have said, but I can fix this." I held the door exactly where it was. "You can't just show up here like this." "I'm not just showing up," he insisted. "I'm here to make things right. I'm here to apologize. I'm here to come home." Home. The word almost made me laugh. "This isn't your home anymore," I said quietly. His face tightened. "Sienna, please, just let me come inside so we can talk." "No." That stopped him. He rushed on, telling me Ashley and Madison both said he was out of line, that he was wrong, that we could work through this. I tilted my head slightly. "So your friends had to tell you humiliating me in public was wrong?" "That's not what I meant." "That's exactly what you meant." He exhaled sharply. "I love you." I did not react. "You love me now?" I asked. "Or you love me now that your friends pointed out you embarrassed yourself?" "That's not fair." "No, what you did wasn't fair." Then headlights swept across the driveway. A car pulled in. Noah stepped out holding a takeout bag and a bottle of wine. He looked relaxed and completely unaware of the tension waiting for him until he saw us. He walked up, calm and steady. "Hey, everything okay?" "It's fine," I said. "He was just leaving." "I'm not leaving," Evan snapped, stepping forward like he could reclaim ground he had already lost. "We're talking." Noah did not react to the tone. "I'm Noah," he said, extending a hand, slightly out of instinct, not aggression. Evan did not take it. He looked at me instead. "Who is this?" I did not hesitate. "This is Noah." "And why is he here?" I met his gaze directly. "Because he's my boyfriend." Silence. Real silence. His face went completely still. "Your boyfriend?" "Yeah." "For how long?" "About a week." His eyes flicked to Noah, then back to me. "So you just replaced me?" "I didn't replace you," I said. "You removed yourself." "That's not what happened. You packed your things and left. You said you needed space." "I didn't say I was leaving permanently." "You left, that's what matters." Noah shifted slightly beside me. "Do you want me to come back later?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "No, stay." That one word landed harder than anything else I had said. Evan heard it too. "This is unbelievable," he said, letting out a short, disbelieving laugh. "You're really moving on like nothing happened?" "Something did happen," I said. "That's why I moved on." He stepped closer, lowering his voice like he was trying to pull me back into something private. "Sienna, we lived together." "You lived in my house," I corrected. The distinction hit. "I didn't think this was permanent," he said. "That was your mistake." He looked at Noah again, this time with something sharper in his eyes. "You think this is real?" Noah did not posture. He did not compete. He just said calmly, "I think she can make her own decisions." That made it worse for Evan. "Tell him," Evan said suddenly, turning back to me. "Tell him we're working this out." I did not even blink. "We're not working anything out." "Sienna." "There's nothing to fix. You showed me exactly what you think of me." I said I was wrong. "No," I said quietly. "You were honest." That one landed. Because he knew I was right. He stood there a moment longer, breathing hard, eyes searching my face for something that was no longer there. Finally, he looked down at the suitcases, then back at me, then at Noah. And something in him shifted. Not acceptance. Realization. Slow, painful, too late. Without another word, he turned, grabbed both suitcases, and walked back down the driveway. I watched him load them into his car, sit there for a second with his hands gripping the wheel, then drive away. No explosion. No dramatic ending. Just gone. I closed the door. Noah set the takeout on the counter carefully. "You okay?" I leaned back against the door and let out a breath I had not realized I had been holding. "Yeah," I said. And this time I meant it. The next few weeks settled into something steady and real. Noah and I became official without needing some big cinematic moment to define it. Calls turned into routines. Dinners turned into habits. Weekends started to feel like something I looked forward to instead of something I had to manage. And the best part? I never once felt like I had to shrink myself to fit into his world. One night, we were at a small gathering with some of his coworkers. At one point, someone asked me what I did. I opened my mouth automatically, ready to simplify it, to make it easier to digest. But before I could say anything, Noah spoke. She owns her own plumbing company, he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Built it from the ground up. There was no hesitation, no softening, no rebranding. Just truth. And the group reacted exactly how normal people react to something impressive. That's amazing. How long have you been doing that? Do you mostly do residential or commercial work? Curiosity, respect, no weird tension, no secondhand embarrassment. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen correctly. Later, I heard through Ashley that Evan had moved back in with his parents because he could not afford his own place. That detail did not make me feel cruel. It just made everything clearer. He had gone from living in a fully paid-off house, mine, to starting over in a room that was not his, all because he cared more about how things looked than what they actually were. A few weeks later, I ran into him one last time at a supply store. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, just in presence. "How have you been?" he asked. "Good," I said. "Busy." He nodded. "I'm glad." Then, after a pause, he said, "I meant what I said about being sorry. I let other people's opinions get into my head. I thought it mattered more than it actually does." I did not interrupt, because this part was not for me. It was for him. "I messed up," he finished. "Yes," I said simply. No anger, no softness either, just truth. "Are you happy?" he asked after a second. I thought about it. Then I answered honestly, "Yeah." Something in his expression shifted at that. Not shock, not jealousy, just acceptance. Like hearing it out loud made something final for him. "That's good," he said quietly. I adjusted the materials in my hand. "Take care of yourself." "You too." And that was it. No dramatic ending, no perfect last line, just two people who had reached the end of something and finally understood why. That night, I was back home in the same house, but it felt different now. Not because anything had changed physically, because I had. Noah was in the kitchen trying to open a stubborn bottle of wine without making a mess. I leaned against the doorway, watching him struggle for a second before stepping in and taking it from him. "You're doing it wrong," I said lightly. "Oh, really?" he replied, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," I said, twisting it open easily and handing it back. "Like that." He laughed. "Show off." "Professional," I corrected. We poured the wine, sat down, let the evening settle into something quiet and real. At one point, he glanced at me and said, "You seem lighter." I smiled slightly. "I am." He did not ask why. He did not need to. Because the truth is, some people will look at everything you have built, everything you are, everything you offer, and still decide it is not enough. Not because it is not enough, but because it does not match the version of life they think they are supposed to want. And when that happens, you can do one of two things. You can shrink yourself, or you can step back and let them live with the consequences of misunderstanding your value. I chose the second. And in the end, that was more than enough.